What we saw was a market failure.
So the Cypriot government realized that not much investment was coming into Cyprus.
Because investors that wanted to get exposure to early stage technology just invested in other.
Yiannis Eftychiou,
VC growth investor at BII.
and the CEO of 33East's
with years of experience
in the investing department.
Innovation and talent is everywhere. It doesn't have to be in Paris. It doesn't have to be in London. It doesn't have to be in Silicon Valley. So the Cypriot government, they saw technology as being the future for Cyprus, right? And we saw a lot of this movement to bring technology companies, larger technology companies to Cyprus. At the same time, the government saw that there was a failure at the early stage. You can't just keep importing technology. You have to become an exporter of technology. Saw this market failure and said, we need to do something about it.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Made in Cyprus, big business story from a tiny island. And today with me, we have Yiannis Eftychiou from 33East's, brand new VC firm backed by European Union, bringing lots of cash into the island. Welcome to the show, Yiannis.
Good to be with you.
I know.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. I know that you are very, very busy. And most of the listeners of the shows are also very busy. So I want you to go straight into the topic. Most cash is given or was given or is still be given to mature ecosystems, London, Berlin, and so on. So what convinced you to bring all that goodness and all that power into Cyprus?
Very good question. You've gone straight to the chase. We see venture, as lots have been said recently about the venture ecosystem, but taking a step back, I think the way that we've seen the venture ecosystem in Europe develop is you've got the large Series A, Series B growth funds being based in big markets like London, like Paris or Berlin. And then you have smaller ecosystems developing in every European market, whether it's in Athens, whether it's in Bucharest, whether it's in Lisbon, whether it's in Limassol. There's a lot of local ecosystems. And I think over the last 3 or 4 years, especially through COVID, this was highlighted even more, is that innovation and talent is everywhere. It doesn't have to be in Paris. It doesn't have to be in London. It doesn't have to be in Silicon Valley. So investors, like lots of new funds have emerged in far and wide across Europe, across the Middle East, to fund local innovation. So you see a lot of these pre-seed and seed funds that invest in local companies. So that means entrepreneurs don't have to leave anymore to go to larger ecosystems and contribute to this brain drain that we saw in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting. And what do you think is unique for Cyprus then? Because I know you have a background in London, right? You're still based in there, right?
Yes, actually just moved
back
home after 16, 17 years abroad.
Is it Limassol or somewhere else?
I moved to Nicosia to start, but I will for sure be spending a lot of time here.
Because having VC-wise Limassol, it's hot, right?
I mean, again, talent is everywhere. A lot of it is in Limassol, but we see a lot of it in Nicosia. We see a lot of it in Larnaca and Paphos. So we have to go far and wide.
And for your experience with London and Cyprus, or UK and Cyprus, what's the difference in terms of VC? Yeah,
so my co-founder is actually very well placed to talk about that. But the London ecosystem only developed in the last 20, 25 years. Yeah. So if you were in London in the late 90s, early 2000s, it wasn't even where Cyprus is right now. In London, there was no startup coming out of London. No big startup came out of London. I think the very first European startup that made it was Skype. And then the founders of Skype went on and founded one of the largest VC
and they were
funds.
Coming from Estonia, I think, right?
Exactly, and it was in the Nordics as well, based. And then you have Spotify, and now you have Revolut, and those are the success stories that have pushed London to be the ecosystem that everybody looks around and says, oh, now it's obvious that there's a big ecosystem in London, but it wasn't obvious 20 years ago. So, and when it comes to venture, the normal market, it creates a failure because venture is a high risk, high return business. And the by nature, a lot of investors will go to large ecosystems. Like money is fungible. Money can travel everywhere. So a lot of investors will go and invest in Silicon Valley, or they now invest in London and European
Safer
funds.
locations, yeah.
Safer locations. But if you look at all these big funds, I mean, invite your listeners to go and Google like kind of Sequoia returns or Andreessen returns. Those are no longer venture returns. Investors looking for the big alpha for their portfolio, they start now looking abroad. They start looking for smaller funds. So if you look at, especially even venture funds like Atomico or Hummingbird out of London, they invest themselves into seed and pre-seed funds in jurisdictions away from their core markets. And that solves for them the problem of covering those markets at the early stage. So what we saw was a market failure. There is a market failure. Cyprus just didn't have a venture fund because investors that wanted to get exposure to early stage technology just invested in other ecosystems. To their credit, the government actually saw this market failure and said, we need to do something about it.
So the Cypriot government realized that not much investment was coming into Cyprus, especially for the pre-seed.
Exactly. Exactly. So the Cypriot government, again, they saw technology as being the future for Cyprus, right? And we saw a lot of this movement to bring technology companies, larger technology companies, to Cyprus. At the same time, the government saw that there was a failure at the early stage. You can't just keep importing technology. You have to become an exporter of technology.
Brilliant.
So they said they mandated the European Investment Fund, which was a subsidiary of the European Investment Bank, to create, to invest in a venture fund in Cyprus. And the European Investment Fund is a very experienced investor. They've invested across the European Union, across venture funds, private equity funds, debt funds. That's their job. Their job is to actually go and correct these market failures. And they do that on behalf of the European Commission, and they do that on behalf of governments.
Fantastic. So it was actually the Cypriot government that realized about this market failure and prompt the European Investment Fund to get some money into Cyprus.
Yes.
And you guys got that money.
Yes. I mean, thankfully, I came together with my co-founder, my partner, Dimitris, when this initiative was introduced by the European Investment Fund. And we came together and we said, we want to create something that exists in, like we see it in Europe, in UK. So we both saw the ecosystem in the UK and internationally, and we wanted to bring back that expertise that we had and we've seen from other markets. So we thought that there is investment in Cyprus. There's a lot of families, there's some angel investors, there's already some funds that invest here at the earlier stage. But we thought that having a classic venture fund that has a sufficient scale to build a diversified portfolio, that has follow-on funding to support companies and to really help them go abroad and to raise money or to serve international markets. That's what we want to do. We want to bring that innovation back to Cyprus and help companies from here.
It's beautiful. I think we connected over one of the events, and I told you about the Made in Cyprus podcast, and I didn't know.
You said Mitzin alla Rotzin.
Mitzi alla Rozzi, exactly. And I think these are the initiatives that this island needs. But what I'm interested into is like, how was the process to get that money? Because you are south of 40 million, isn't it? With the VC, 27 something from the European Investment Fund, and about 10 from the private other investors you got. Tell me a bit about this journey, because I know very little, but it does smell like pain.
I can't complain. Obviously, looking back, I think we have people have a bias to forget the painful experiences and you remember the positive experiences. But I think I have to give credit where credit's due. I think the decision to appoint the European Investment Fund was the right decision. They are very experienced in all of our interactions with them. They have a lot of experience in how to set up the fund, how to set up the right incentives, how to diligence the team, how to diligence the strategy. Because a lot of VC investing doesn't come in one flavor. As you probably have seen, and your listeners have seen, there's lots of flavors. You can have accelerators, you can have pre-seed funds, you have what you call a pray and spray, you've got like 50, 60 investments per portfolio, you've got more concentrated portfolios. So when I came together with Dimitris, first of all, what we said was, let's go fast forward 20 years. What do we see Cyprus being great at? What industries do we think Cyprus can be known worldwide for. So like similar when you look at Israeli ecosystem, what is the Israeli ecosystem known for? It's cybersecurity, it's software, it's selling into the US. They build a brand around that. When we think about Cyprus, we think that it's going to be along similar lines. It's going to be, again, software built in Cyprus but sold internationally. The local market is just very small. So when we start from that then creates an addressable market for us. It creates there's a lot of companies who will be great companies, but they can't, if they only serve the European market, they always be limited by the size of the market. So we've created this kind of what our target is for startups. And then we said, okay, what do we need to do for these companies? We need to give them capital. That arguably is going to be the easier part, but then we need to help them. We need to help them either with recruiting talent or with acquiring their first customers or developing their product, doing the iterations to get to product market fit. We need to help them raise capital from international investors. That's where we have a lot of expertise. Like both me and Dimitris have been in the ecosystems. Dimitris raised tens of millions from those investors himself. So he's been through that journey. I've invested in tens or hundreds of millions as well myself. So I know what the growth investor looks for. I know how a startup has to pitch themselves at that stage. And that's what a fund does. It's not just investing. I think the investing part is actually the easier part. It's the once you build the portfolio, how do you help that portfolio grow, scale, and then support it to an exit?
You want to make the investment back and much more, obviously, right? So
much easier to get money back than to get money out the door.
100%. So I love what you said about starting from the vision, starting from the end. And that's something we always say with the brand projects we do at the factory as well, right? If you don't have the vision, then you cannot make it reality. If you don't know where you're going, then how you're going to get there? And was that conversation, that realization of this tech-driven future potential of Cyprus that allow you to get this help from the European Investment Fund then?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for why they selected us, but that is, I mean, firstly, that's why I decided to work with Dimitris. We shared the same vision. There was no debate. Well, there was a few things that when we started talking, it became obvious that we had the same vision for where the ecosystem should go, and that it was worthwhile as putting in the work and taking the pain for it, because it's going to be a long journey. It's not going to happen overnight, right? And then when we came together and put our strategy together and presented it to the European Investment Fund, I assume that they saw a few other teams, a few other strategies. They also saw other strategies from other markets that they invested in and what worked, what didn't work. We also did that homework. We studied the Greek ecosystem at length, the Slovenian ecosystem at length. That's where the AIF also did another program. We looked at the European, the London ecosystem. And we then wanted to take the best from each of those ecosystems and the best models to adapt it to the Cypriot market. Yeah, well done. So Cyprus might have not happened if it wasn't for you. Then there was not that it had to happen right at that time. I was actually I don't know. I think that there was an intention of creating a fund in Cyprus.
Yeah.
But I think in any case, similar to us, if you don't find a suitable investment, you just won't invest, right? Like it's much. You have to make an investment thinking that this is what's going to be successful.
Yeah.
If you don't think it's going to be successful, then you're setting yourself up to fail from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I can't speak for their decision. There's also other very talented teams in Cyprus that we also want to partner with. So this is not a team sport. This is not an individual sport.
It's a team sport. Yeah. And it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Exactly.
It's for the long run. And I guess another interesting conversation that you're going to start being ready with is pitching founders that are hesitant kind of like to base their operation here in a way as well. Because as you said, there is only as much as relocation we can do. We also need to start from within, inside out approach as well, because there is a lot of talk into the real estate. There is a talk about the taxation, holiday destination, but not enough about the future of the tech island, right? So how do you see that being a conversation that you guys will also have to get used to it and start promoting?
Yeah, it's a multi-layered question that you're asking. I'll try to decompose it in the way that we think about it. We start from a very good position. Let me say that. I think the government here, a lot of the organizations that are working with the technology companies here have been doing a lot of great work.
Yeah.
So there's great taxation incentive for companies and for individuals to come here. The corporate structure, the system, the legal framework is better. It's not perfect, but it's better than a lot of our competitors. So there's a lot of companies that already choose to base themselves here. If you look at a lot of the Greek funds that the startups that they invested in already have their incorporation in Cyprus. So we're starting from a very positive situation.
Especially in the last 10 years, I think.
Exactly, especially in the last 10 years. But for me, there's always more that we have to do. There's always more that we can modernize our system, modernize our services, make it more attractive, make it more fit for purpose for startups. I think big technology companies have different needs. They have different capacity to purchase advice or to use consultants, whereas small startups don't have that. So I think what we as a fund, as 33East, we're going to try and do is try and support those companies navigate the local environment. That's one. That has to do with incorporation. But I don't want to focus there because I think Cyprus has unique characteristics that are better than a lot of other jurisdictions in the region and also across Europe. And I think the first one is that it's multicultural. It's one of the few countries that is truly multicultural, whereas a lot of other cities that you may think of as hubs for venture, except London, perhaps, a lot of others aren't multicultural. The local culture is very strong. Whereas
you saying Middle East, for example? Or?
You say Middle East, or even like you talk about Paris, or you talk about Madrid. It's quite local.
They're culturally more conservative, perhaps.
And the culturally more closed. They're not built as an international market. Whereas Cyprus has become that very quickly.
This is interesting. It probably also goes back to the fact of being an island and being contaminated since the beginning of the time with so many different cultures.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually, I should have prefaced this. I ask whenever I meet the founder who's based their company here, I ask them this question because I want to start building a thesis for why should companies come here. And I've met lots of people. I met people who commissioned advisors, like individuals, like entrepreneurs who commissioned one of the big fours to give them a short list for where they should move to when they were moving out of London. And they decided to come to Cyprus because of it's like access to markets, and it's English speaking and taxation reasons, etc. So that's one. The second one is talent. And I think I've never met any entrepreneur that didn't have a complaint about talent. If you're in the US, you'll say talent's expensive. If you're in London, the same. If you're in smaller ecosystems, you'll say there's not enough talent. It's cheap, but it's not enough. There's always issues for talent. So that's the starting point. But what I like about the ecosystem in Cyprus is that, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, there was a massive influx of tech talent that came to Cyprus. I'm not sure if you're familiar. There was a Sequoia report that was done, I think it was done a couple of years ago now, that looked at the large ecosystems, like large cities in Europe when it comes to tech talent. And you had the biggest one by far was London. I think it had something like 50 or 100,000 developers, like technology talent. Then you have Paris, then Berlin, then Athens, I think had somewhere in the region of 5 or 10,000 tech talent. How many people came to Cyprus in the last 5 years? All in the tech industry. I think it's a little understood at the moment, but I think Cyprus has created a big ecosystem, a big network of technology talent.
Yeah.
Never enough, right? Like we should get more people to study STEM, a lot more people to get into technology. I think there's a lot of potential, a lot more that we can do, but we're starting from a very good place. And the last thing I want to note is, again, talking to founders for why they would build the technology team in Cyprus. One interesting tidbit anecdote that I heard was they have no churn. Like if they hired a team in Europe, in London, then their developers, they would come back every 6 months, ask for a raise, or they leave for the next company that gives them either more money or more equity.
Lots of competition.
I spoke with founders here building Series A backed companies from international funds, and they still have the first developer they ever hired. They still had them with them, and that the technology debt that you have, if your team is churning every few months, is not something that founders think of a lot. But if you can build continuity in your team, you don't have to train people every time you have to hire them, or you have other people that can can teach your new hires on the job by virtue of being there many years. That is very important.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, right? It's much better to have a few good people that stay and grow within the organization, because those people also retain knowledge and can share knowledge much easier than imagine if every 6 months you had to train them again on your, on your tech
Even
stack.
you here, right? Like you don't want your people leaving, and it's not like you're a bad employer, but it's just the market is so competitive,
100%.
and people choose to leave for different reasons, maybe for family reasons. Like a lot of people go to London but then leave, right?
Yeah.
So they are working for a startup for a few years and then go back home.
100%. And also after COVID in London, there has been a massive exodus as well, right? I mean, going out of the London or northern or towards the coast, a lot of people just left and they don't want to come back. You know, also that these big corporations, they have these massive offices, they all have empty. So there's also a big conversation about what is going on with London in the next couple of years, because it's a lot happened and a lot changed really quickly after COVID.
I want to, my contrarian view here is that a lot of European ecosystems and VCs say, I think we're taking away share from London, or London is weakening. I don't see it like that. I see that we need London to be strong. We need London to be successful. We need that ecosystem to be the anchor for the European ecosystem, because a stronger London ecosystem means stronger ecosystems around it, smaller satellite ecosystems. Same with the Valley. Like, you can't have a strong US VC market unless you have a strong Silicon Valley. Big companies there that can acquire younger companies, can invest in younger companies. So we need the champions. We need European champions. We need to work with ecosystems like London. We're not competitors. I don't see it as we're competing. I think we're working together.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And we're adding value to them. We're maybe perhaps reducing the cost base, adding more skills, adding markets, being a bridge between, let's say, London and the Middle East. Like, there's things that we can help. I think that this notion of where everyone is competing with London, I don't think that's a zero-sum game. I think we're growing.
It's a build-up game. 1 + 1 equals 11, isn't it? So it's that. I love your insight that you said about the founders, and I will add one last more number 4 from all the conversation that I had, is that Cyprus has that unique equation of work and play. It's one of those places where you can do really good work. Lots of companies are relocating here. There is a lot of talent coming here, but also the lifestyle. The lifestyle is incredible. And for me, was one of my main factors moving away after 10 years of London. London for me is a city that takes a lot, but also gives a lot. So it takes and gives. Whether Cyprus, ironically, I work more hours than London, but I'm in an environment because of the safety, the weather, the food, and family and friends, which gives me a much better balance. And almost every person I talk, every founder I talk, it mentioned that unique work and play situation of relocating into Cyprus as well, which obviously plays a big part as well.
That is hugely important. I think it's again another unique selling point that we have. I don't want to diminish the value that an ecosystem like London has for encouraging hard work and encouraging kind of these very dedicated, driven entrepreneurs. I think even today, I think when like founders think that when they have to go and really be intense and work really hard, they'll go to Silicon Valley or they go to the US. I think there's things we can learn here. I think we have the ingredients of a better lifestyle, but I think what we ought to be also working towards is how do we bring back that culture of excellence? How do we bring back the culture of intensity and urgency? Because I think what these younger, more immature ecosystems don't have yet is they haven't seen how to build a big company yet. They haven't seen what it takes to go from 0 customers to 100, to 1,000, to 1 million customers. So I think that requires hard work. And I think, yes, I agree with you. Balancing it with the quality of life that we have here can be a value add for Cyprus.
It's interesting. And so going back onto how you secure the fund and you're sitting on this capital that you wanna bring into the ecosystem. What are your responsibilities attached to it, specifically from the European Investment Fund? So what do you have to prove back to them, basically, in a way, from your commitment?
Yeah, it's a classic venture fund. So we the incentivization is for us to return the fund, to have.
But you have you
return.
decide what to do in a way.
Exactly. So it's a classic fund in that sense. So we have our own investment committee, and then the European Investment Fund and other major investors sit on the board of the fund. So they also oversee the governance, the good running of the fund, and we have like a limited partnership agreement where there's a lot of checks and balances for what we can and cannot do. For instance, we can invest in certain sectors that are banned by the European Union, etc. But I think broadly speaking, and for the listeners here, what our mandate is, just long term, is to develop the ecosystem in Cyprus, is to bring the know-how here in Cyprus, and we can invest in companies in Cyprus when they're formed, or when we invest, or we can invest in companies from abroad and bring them to Cyprus.
Oh, interesting.
So we can also do that. And a lot of the Greek funds have done that, where they went abroad, found the diaspora, Greeks, or for us it's going to be Cypriots, and try and incentivize them to also set up here in Cyprus and give them a reason why to do that.
Plum, for example.
Exactly. Plum is a Cypriot company. It's a Cypriot co-founder.
But they are in London, right?
Yeah. And they were London founded, and then they got investment from a Greek fund and set up offices in Greece. So we want to do something like that.
Some of those stories.
And this is not unique. Like Greece was one ecosystem. You see this a lot in the Middle East. A lot of funds in Dubai and in Saudi. All they're doing is have money from the government, and they go and invest in startups in Europe, try to bring them back to their market. So it's not unique, and it's something that's quite common, especially for startups, because startups are starved for money. So what you want to do is find good, hardworking entrepreneurs that can come here and build.
It's a fascinating story, especially for the diaspora, having the reverse effect. Okay, you went there, you found that you're doing well. Now come back, because the ecosystem is ready. We have the money, we have the knowledge that we're building here. And I love that, because I think there has been a massive brain drain in the last couple of years. I met my girlfriend in London. She was studying Manchester for 10 years. My business partner's the same. Most of my generation, 30, 40, they were going to uni in the UK, right? So that was normal, internship, business, perhaps funding their company there, and then almost in a way forgetting about Cyprus, right? And I feel that that diaspora does not necessarily know how much happened in Cyprus in the past 10 years.
I agree with you. I think platforms like yours have a very good positive influence on the ecosystem, because you go and broadcast what's changing and what the company what the ecosystem looks like here. I think when I have this discussion with people, I bring the example of Greece, because I think that's a perfect example of the country went through really tough times.
My God.
And really everyone left. Like you found people. I found Greek people in London, and I asked them why you're here. They left at 35, 35, 40, and said there's nothing for me to do in Greece. And I'm in London now, and I meet Greek people, and I ask them, why are you in Greece? And it's like, why would I not be? Why would I be in London? London has nothing more to offer me than Greece. And I think this happened in the span of 5-10 years. It's the story here has changed dramatically.
So fast. I can't believe how quickly got back to its feet and where it is now. And
entrepreneurship really has that effect on the economy, especially on startups. It's like startups predominantly employ young people that are more
quick
accustomed to technology and new trends, etc. That's not limited to, but a large proportion of the employees. So it creates very good, high quality jobs that really inspire young people. Because if you think about people, Cypriots that choose to be abroad, might be because they want to have this international mindset. They want to have a reason to travel for work. Working at a startup in Cyprus gives you all of that, right? Like you wake up, you're in Cyprus, you have all the benefits of being here, but you're selling to customers, you're talking to people abroad all the time, because that's where the markets are going to be. Yeah. So I think that it can actually bring you that right balance of
100%.
Of being closer to home, but still being exposed to international markets.
So Yiannis, you obviously took a lot of benefits and knowledge and experience on being abroad, right? So how long have you been abroad? From out of Cyprus?
16, 17 years.
It's a long time. It's a long time. And a lot to change. Would you send your kids to a similar journey as well? Go out first and then bring it back? Or do you think at that point we'll be in a situation where Cyprus has it all?
Well, I don't have kids yet, so I can't speak right now. I certainly think there's benefits from people having interactions and experiences abroad, whether that's through school or through work. I certainly think that especially in my case, I was heavily influenced by all of my experience, and I chose to. It was a deliberate choice to sacrifice other things for instead of like traveling. Yeah. So I think there are benefits to that. Having said that, I mean the Cypriot education system is great, right? The University of Cyprus, the back here in Limassol, you've got some private universities popping up here, international universities coming here. It's going to be tech companies partnering here. So and you can still work for international companies here
just by being here.
So it's not. I don't think it would be too far-fetched to say that a future entrepreneur of a big technology company out of Cyprus may have actually studied here and built a company here.
Fully
exactly.
In the
so I don't see a reason that you must do it. I see benefits to it if people have the opportunity to do it, and I invite them to either try to work for companies remotely, for example, or do courses remotely. I think there's definitely benefit to seeing that how other people work, how other companies work.
Yeah, it's interesting. And obviously 33East has a deep focus on seed fund and kind of like early stage startups, which in an ecosystem as Cyprus makes totally sense, right? What do you think we are missing to get to that point where we can have stories of Series A and Series B in Cyprus?
How much time do you have? This is something that this is a long journey, right? It's
how long do you think it is?
I think within a 10-year period. I don't think it's unreasonable. I think we should be aiming to have a local company, a Cypriot company that has an exit or is valued like north of 500 million. I think that's a reasonable bet that we should do, and I think other ecosystems have done similar in a similar time. I think the ecosystem here is developing very rapidly, but I think what we see is that there's a bifurcation of the different local ecosystems within Cyprus. So we see companies here in Limassol that have that experience working for international companies that have scaled rapidly. So they themselves have learned that some of the things that VCs keep talking about, like go after big markets, really understand your market. Like you see a lot more sophistication. Whereas you see some people that haven't had that experience, that they're still going through that learning process. And it's a process. Like everyone learns, and everyone continues to learn as they go. But I think there needs to be that education for Cypriot founders, especially for those who have ambition to build big businesses. Not every business is meant to be a big business. It's fine. It's totally fine. But for those who want to do that, there's certain kind of mistakes that we are still making here. And I think that the fundamental ones are not really understanding the market you're selling into, not going after big markets, focusing on small markets and thinking that that's going to be a good way of getting to product market fit, where in reality, it's not a big enough market to actually get there. The next part, which is something that again is developing but it is not yet there, is that it really helps getting the local companies here in Cyprus to work more with startups. I think a lot of ecosystems abroad, in the US, in Europe, you have industrial players. You've got technology companies, large companies that have learned to work with startups.
Yeah, but they also have a more appetite for risk, though. If you're talking about US, culturally, they're ready to risk it. And from the local perspective, from the Cypriot perspective, we believe into something where it's already believable in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the point. And to even take that a bit further, Cypriot companies look at a tech company thinking that they could be a competitor.
Exactly, the wrong C instead of collaboration, competition.
Exactly, that's a fair assessment, because in Cyprus is a small place, right?
It's really small market.
It invites you almost to think like a zero-sum game, whereas technology companies grow the pie, they expand beyond Cyprus, they'll open up new markets.
Yeah, really interesting.
I think that's what I want. I would love to see more of. I would love to see companies using their expertise, using their resources, and we have a lot of that. We have shipping companies here, we have pharmaceutical companies, we have banking companies, banks, telecom providers. Like, there's a lot of companies that can invite startups relatively cheaply to work with them, even like in a sandbox fashion that allows entrepreneurs in Cyprus to try out things.
Yeah.
And then families that or angel investors that are already doing that, and I'm encouraged to hear that there's a lot of angel investment in startups. I think we just need more of that, and we see that's the next step. You want to see money coming back into the ecosystem, and whether that comes from founders who've been successful and exited, or it comes from established companies and families that they now want to have some exposure in technology using their expertise and connections in the market. I think that's very important and very valuable for the ecosystem. And it takes a couple of cycles to do it. I think if you're in Cyprus, if you're in Greece right now, there's a lot of money going in at the angel round. And I think there's a lot of this pent-up demand. Now, a lot of people are waking up to the opportunity, and they see that they want to have that exposure themselves.
No, I love that. Education, collaboration, and angel and other founders bringing it back, like, which sums it a lot into mindset. Isn't it that we have to have that mindset that the ecosystem is happening. We have to have the mindset that these startups are trying. We should give them an occasion, a chance, so then these founders can go be successful and then go back into the ecosystem, right? Exactly. It's almost like a chicken and egg situation.
It's a flywheel. Right? It's a flywheel, and we're like, and this flywheel doesn't move, nor naturally. That's the market failure. Yeah. That's why the EIF or the government's decision to mandate the EIF is basically kickstarting this flywheel, like kind of throwing the first money into the ecosystem to try and get the flywheel to work, and that's our ambition. That's what we want to get. If we are successful, it means that this flywheel is working.
There has to be an inorganic push at the beginning to then have that organic flywheel.
And it's
take
not
over.
Again, it's not Cyprus is not the only country that does that. In the UK, you brought the UK example. London is a massive ecosystem. Every other city in the UK is very small. So when you have funds wanting to start in a local market, let's say Bristol or Manchester, you've got the British Business Bank, which is the UK government's version of the EIF, that invests and anchors those funds. It's an established practice, and it's proven to work. Like, you need this initial kickstart to put the first money into the ecosystem, and then that creates more and more companies.
It's true, because I've seen success stories into biotech, Oxford, Exeter. Like, there are some other micro ecosystem within UK which brought some amazing products and amazing brands out there. Yiannis, like, I could go on for this forever, because literally this startup is about helping and supporting that ecosystem. The last question for you will be, if you had a magic wand and you could magically move it Harry Potter style and fix one thing, what would that be?
Fix one thing?
Accelerate one thing, fix one thing, inject one thing, one magic that you could do to Cyprus. What would that be?
You've caught me off guard. I don't have a wish list, or at least one thing. I don't think one thing is enough to change. I think it's a lot of small things. We can talk about everything that we just discussed. I think founders thinking more ambitious, or more founders thinking like coming back to Cyprus to set up companies here. I think the one thing that has happened that was almost like in a very short period of time is the increase of the technology sector in our economy. Like, it just happened very quickly. Went from virtually non-existent to now being 15% of GDP. And that is effectively, if you had asked me 3-4 years ago, that may have been...
believe more in tech would have been maybe
or like
answer,
the influence of tech on the economy.
Yeah.
I think, if I could swing the magic wand, is perhaps change the perception that foreign investors or foreign founders have for Cyprus. I think at the moment that's holding us back a little bit. Like when you talk, maybe you have the same experience. You talk to people, and they don't have, they don't know all the great things that are happening here, but they know us perhaps for the wrong reasons. And I think the government is doing a lot of work to change that perception, and it's in all of our hands now to also change the narrative and change the story.
Absolutely. I was gonna prompt that because we talked about it as well, and I know that the reason why we connected was because of that, this bloody brand of Cyprus. You know, what is it? What do we want to make it? And it's really up to us. I think the government is doing some great work to promote these things. Like, you would not be in this position, you would have not been empowered to do all the impact work that you're going to be doing in the next couple of years. But as you said, it's up to us as well. Really build the future brand of Cyprus, and let's talk, less about the taxation, halloumi and hospitality and real estate, a bit more about really what is building the future of Cyprus, which are these tech entrepreneurs, these VCs, these people coming here and believing it, taking risk and really building and putting Cyprus on a map from a perspective of power for the European and the global future as well. So because we truly are Mizia Laruzzi. I cannot believe how small this island is, this half island is, but how much impact we are starting to have in such a limited amount of time. And I think the future is ours and is for people like you, like me, like all the listeners. And we are the one making the brand of Cyprus.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't have said it better myself. That's a great way to end.
Thank you very much, Yiannis, and
Thank you.
Good luck with your work. Where can people find more about what you're doing?
We're on our website, 33East's.vc. We have our contact details there. Also, we have a form that potential or startups or teams can submit their pitches or proposals.
And you're in the phase of connecting as much as possible, right?
I am in the phase. I want to hear about everything. It might be too early, it might be too late. It doesn't matter. I want to learn who's doing cool stuff in Cyprus, whether they're just initially at the stage of thinking about it, or they've already left their jobs, or they've already raised money. I'm in the business of connecting all these pieces together, and the more people that we connect with, the better.
Fantastic. Guys, you heard that. 33East VC. Go there, share your story, and go Team Cyprus. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.